Laudetur Jesus Christus. Vatican and World News.
In the headlines this Friday, December 4th, Pope Francis invites new ambassadors to work for a more just and fraternal world. A new Vatican document aims at assisting and guiding Catholic bishops in promoting Christian unity through their ministry, and UN agencies sound the alarm over food insecurity in Yemen. In the Vatican, I'm Francesca Merlo. Pope Francis addressed a group of non-resident ambassadors to the Holy See on Friday, presenting their credentials, saying that more than ever, the world needs sincere and respectful dialogue and cooperation, capable of unity in confronting the grave threats facing the planet. Lydia O'Kane reports.
The new non-resident ambassadors to the Holy See, whom Pope Francis received in the Vatican on Friday, come from Jordan, Kazakhstan, Zambia, Mauritania, Uzbekistan, Madagascar, Estonia, Rwanda, Denmark and India. They form part of a core which represents some 183 states that currently have diplomatic relations with the Holy See. In his discourse, Pope Francis told them they were beginning their mission at a time of great challenge facing the entire human family.
La vostra missione inizia in un periodo di grande sfida per l'intera famiglia umana.
Even before the outbreak of COVID-19, he said, it was clear that 2020 was going to be a year marked by urgent humanitarian needs due to conflicts, violence and terrorism in different parts of the world. The Pope noted that economic crises are causing hunger and mass migration, while climate change is increasing the risk of natural disasters, famine and drought. Quoting from the extraordinary moment of prayer on the 27th of March of this year, he said, "The crisis has made us realise that we are in the same boat, all of us fragile and disorientated, but at the same time important and needed, all of us called to row together, each of us in need of comforting the other."
La crisi ci ha fatto capire che ci troviamo sulla stessa barca.
Today, perhaps more than ever, emphasised the Pope, our increasingly globalised world urgently demands sincere and respectful dialogue and cooperation, capable of uniting us in confronting the grave threats facing our planet and mortgaging the future of younger generations. And referring to his recent encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, Pope Francis expressed the desire that, in this our time, by acknowledging the dignity of each human person, we can contribute to the rebirth of a universal aspiration to fraternity.
Possiamo far rinascere tra tutti un'aspirazione mondiale alla fraternità.
Pope Francis concluded by expressing the hope that the diplomats' activity as representatives of their nations to the Holy See would foster the culture of encounter needed to transcend the differences and divisions that so often stand in the way of realising the high ideals and goals proposed by the international community. Each of us, he said, is invited, in fact, to work daily for the building of an ever more just, fraternal and united world. I'm Lydia O'Kane.
At a press conference on Friday morning, Cardinal Kurt Koch, the president of the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity, presented a new ecumenical vademecum, or guidebook, addressed to bishops and intended to encourage and assist them in their work of ecumenism in their ministry. Christopher Wells tells us more.
The new document, with the title The Bishop and Christian Unity, an Ecumenical Vademecum, was requested in 2016 by members of the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity. It's being issued to mark the 60th anniversary of the establishment of the Pontifical Council by Pope St. John XXIII in 1960, and also to mark the 25th anniversary of St. John Paul II's landmark encyclical on ecumenism, Ut Unum Sent. Earlier this year, Pope Francis expressed his satisfaction with the initiative in a letter to Cardinal Koch for the anniversary of Ut Unum Sent. In that letter, the Holy Father noted that the service of unity is an essential aspect of the mission of every bishop, who is the visible source and foundation of unity in his own particular church. The Ecumenical Vademecum has two parts. The first, said Cardinal Koch, explains what is required of the Catholic Church in the fulfillment of its ecumenical mission, while noting that the search for unity is first of all a challenge to Catholics. The first part of the document considers structures and personnel involved in ecumenism at the diocesan and national levels, as well as ecumenical formation and the use of mass media. The second part of the document examines 4 ways in which the Catholic Church can interact with other Christian communities. Spiritual ecumenism, described as the soul of the ecumenical movement, the dialogue of charity, promoting a culture of encounter, the dialogue of truth, referring to the search for the truth of God that Catholics undertake together with other Christians, especially through theological dialogue, and the dialogue of life, involving occasions of exchange and collaboration with other Christians. Presenting the document, Cardinal Koch pointed out that the Vaticum not only lays out principles for ecumenism, but also offers practical recommendations, concrete suggestions for initiatives bishops can undertake at the local and regional levels. Cardinal Koch concluded his presentation by recalling Pope Francis' insight that Christian unity is a journey, and that if we undertake the journey with Christ, he himself will bring that unity about. Cardinal Koch expressed the hope that the Ecumenical Vademecum for bishops might be a help on the journey of bishops and of the whole Catholic Church toward the full communion for which the Lord has prayed. I'm Christopher Wells.
According to the United Nations, the acute food insecurity in Yemen is edging towards famine. A study by the agency has shown that millions of people in the country will face some form of food crisis next year. As Robin Gomes reports, the window to prevent a famine in the war-torn country is narrowing.
More than half of Yemen's population of 30 million risks slipping into worsening levels of hunger by mid-2021. The World Food Programme, WFP, the UN's Children's Fund, UNICEF, and the World Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, said in a joint statement on Thursday. According to the analysis by the UN's Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, IPC, around 45% of Yemen's population is facing high levels of acute food insecurity. Of these, 33% are in crisis, 12 are in emergency, and 16,500 people are in catastrophic famine-like situation, the worst level of the IPC classifications. These alarming numbers must be a wake-up call to the world, WFP's Executive Director David Beasley warned. Yemen is on the brink of famine, and we must not turn our backs on the millions of families who are now in desperate need, he urged. The conflict in the Arab world's most impoverished nation began when Iran-backed Shiite rebels known as Houthis captured the capital of Sana'a in 2014, forcing the internationally recognized government to flee. The following year, a Sunni coalition led by Saudi Arabia, which supports the government, intervened to battle the rebels and curb Iran's influence in what has turned to be a stalemated regional proxy war. Since then, more than 100,000 people, both fighters and civilians, have been killed. Famine has never been officially declared in Yemen, where the more than 5-year-old war has left 80% of the population heavily dependent on aid in what the UN says is the world's worst humanitarian crisis. I'm Robin Gomes.
The Catholic bishops of England and Wales are encouraging Catholics to get vaccinated against COVID-19, saying they do not commit a sin by using the vaccines developed by various pharmaceutical companies, which were authorized this week by the British government. Some people have questioned the moral permissibility of the coronavirus vaccine, arguing it has been developed from cell lines originating from the cells of an aborted fetus in 1983. According to a statement released on Thursday by the Department for Social Justice of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of England and Wales, however, one does not sin by receiving the vaccine. The statement signed by Bishop Richard Moth cited the views expressed by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and the Pontifical Academy of Life, according to which one may, in good conscience and for a grave reason, receive a vaccine sourced in this way, provided that there is a sufficient moral distance between the present administration of the vaccine and the original wrongful action. Archbishop Paul Richard Gallagher, the Vatican Secretary for Relations with States, highlighted the importance of protecting the right of freedom of religion or belief, as well as places of worship at a meeting of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE. Father Benedict Mayaki tells us more.
The Holy See's Secretary for Relations with States, Archbishop Paul Gallagher, has called for the protection of the right of religious freedom and also of places of worship during a meeting of the Ministerial Council of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe on Thursday. The Archbishop expressed the Holy See's grave concern about the rising number of terrorist attacks, hate crimes, and other manifestations of intolerance targeting persons, places of worship, and religious sites. He added that it is even more regrettable that some of these acts are committed in the name of religion. He stressed that violence, persecution, and killing in the name of God is not religion, but radicalism, which needs to be fought by all, using all legitimate means. He also called on the OSCE to effectively address intolerance and discrimination against members of all religions without prejudice or hierarchical selectivity. The Archbishop also highlighted that even though there has been a lot of progress in the field of security, we still face various persistent threats and other unresolved issues that are able to undermine the stability and security. He therefore called on the OSCE Ministerial Council to continue working for peace and justice by implementing the commitments that they have undertaken. These commitments, he continued, must be implemented in good faith as they do not only honor the self-commitment of every participating state of the OSCE, but they also demonstrate their appreciation of the organization and its members. And in the light of the ongoing pandemic, Archbishop Gallagher noted that we must work together, mindful that the burden carried by some necessarily affects humanity and the whole family of nations. He said that we cannot omit the new forms of poverty created by the pandemic, which have exacerbated already existing poverties and added new ones. He therefore insisted that the policies put in place by governments to help those in need during the crisis should be guided by two principles: the inclusion of all and the protection of the sacredness of human life. I'm Father Benedict Mayaki.
And finally, Cardinal Raniero Cantalamessa, the preacher to the papal household, today delivered his first Advent sermon to Pope Francis and the Roman Curia. He focused his reflections on the meaning of death, calling it a bridge to eternal life. Devin Watkins reports.
Cardinal Raniero Cantalamessa began his Advent sermon with an Italian poet's 10-word poem written during the First World War, which also expresses humanity's experience of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are like the leaves on the trees in autumn. Death, said the Cardinal, can be spoken of in two different ways, either in light of Christ's salvific death and resurrection, or in the light of wisdom. Both have something to teach humanity, he said. The first shows us that death is not a wall delineating the end of existence, but a bridge to eternal life. The other, a wisdom-focused perspective, allows us to draw lessons for living a good life from the human experience of death. Cardinal Cantalamessa said the biblical books of wisdom as well as the Gospels provide ample reflections on the theme of human mortality, which was picked up in the tradition of the Church. Rather than being a morbid fascination, he added, contemplating our mortality should lead us to faith in eternal life. The newly created Franciscan cardinal went on to invite his hearers to learn at the school of Sister Death. The current calamity, he said, has come to remind us how little depends on human will when it comes to planning and determining the future. Death, he recalled, encourages us to live well, preventing us from getting attached to things. Cardinal Cantalamessa pointed out that death played an important role in evangelizing Europe many centuries ago and could again be helpful in re-evangelizing it. He added that one modern psychologist holds that the refusal or negation of death is at the root of every human action. The Cardinal said the goal was not simply to restore humanity's fear of death, but he said one needs to have experience of that fear to be freed from it. Jesus, he added, came to teach the fear of eternal death to those who knew none other than the fear of bodily death. In conclusion, Cardinal Cantalamessa recalled that Jesus himself preempted his own death with the institution of the Eucharist. Participating in the Eucharist, he said, is how we can celebrate our own death and offer it up each day to the Father. What greater use can one think of making of life, he asked, than giving it out of love to the Creator, who, out of love, gave it to us? I'm Devin Watkins.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Vatican and World News. For more on these and other stories, and to hear this broadcast as a podcast, please be sure to visit our web portal at www.vaticannews.va. You can also catch the latest updates on our Facebook page or on Twitter. Many thanks go to Gustavo Messina in studio. In the Vatican, I'm Francesca Merlo.